It wasn't supposed to happen, at least not like this. Not in this era, not between these two legends. One was the embodiment of explosive, raw power, a storm of fists that changed boxing forever. The other, a master of fluid motion and surgical precision, whose striking in MMA was poetry in motion. For decades, fans debated their greatness in separate arenas. Now by some strange twist of fate and history, those two paths are finally set to collide. Mike Tyson vs. Anderson Silva, two names etched in the foundations of combat sports, now standing across from each other not as past icons, but as present warriors. The idea began as a whisper, one of those fantasy matchups tossed around in locker rooms, barbershops, and internet forums. What if Tyson fought Silva? At first, it sounded like pure speculation. One belonged to the squared circle, the other to the cage. But legends like these don't just belong to their sport. They transcend it. Both men, long past the prime years that made them household names, still carried a mystique that younger fighters could only dream of. They weren't just fighters. They were mythologies wrapped in flesh and bone, and the thought of seeing them face off under one set of rules was almost too surreal to be true. Tyson's return to the spotlight had already reignited the combat world. His exhibition against Roy Jones Jr. showed flashes of the old fire, explosive movement, head swiveling hooks, and that unmistakable aura of danger. People saw not just a man returning to the ring, but a storm being reborn. Meanwhile, Silva, after a legendary career in the UFC, had begun carving a new path in boxing, defying age, proving doubters wrong, and showing that timing and intelligence could still rule over youth and aggression. When Silva outboxed Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., it wasn't a fluke, it was a warning. But make no mistake, this isn't just a story about a boxing match. It's about legacy. Two men from different worlds carrying the weight of expectation, pride, and history into one final proving ground. Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history, known for ending fights in seconds, enters with the specter of his past looming behind him, every punch a reminder of who he was. Silva, the Spider, perhaps the most graceful striker MMA has ever seen, walks in with the quiet calm of a man who has danced with chaos and come out smiling. This is more than fists and gloves. This is style versus style, era versus era, discipline versus instinct. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into rumors. Then the footage surfaced, grainy, brief, but unmistakable. Tyson working the pads with vicious intent. Silva shadowboxing with that eerie smoothness that always made opponents hesitate. Speculation caught fire. Interviews began to hint at something more than just talk. Promoters, journalists, and fans alike began circling the date, hoping this fantasy would finally find its way into reality. And now, it's official. Contract signed. Gloves ready. The venue locked. But beneath the hype, there's a deeper current, one that few are talking about. It's the idea of redemption, of rewriting the final chapter. For Tyson, it's the chance to silence every critic who said his time was long gone, to remind the world that power never truly fades. For Silva, it's an opportunity to defy convention yet again, to prove that his genius can bridge even the most unlikely of gaps. They're not just fighting each other. They're fighting every assumption that's ever been made about them. In training camps hidden away from public eyes, preparations are already underway. Tyson's camp echoes with the sound of leather cracking against pads, heavy bags swinging like wrecking balls under the force of his punches. His footwork, honed from youth, is being sharpened again under the gaze of old-school trainers who know what's at stake. Across the country, Silva is surrounded by a different energy, focused, fluid, cerebral. His team watches every movement like a science experiment, refining the details, timing his counters, sharpening the angles that made him impossible to hit for so long. They're both tuning themselves like instruments, preparing for a performance that could echo across generations. And the styles? They couldn't be more different. Tyson, a master of pressure, head movement, and violent rhythm, aims to break you down before you even know what's happening. Silva, a trickster at heart, uses rhythm to lull you, pull you in, then strike with laser accuracy. It's a battle between chaos and control, between a predator who lunges and a spider who waits. One wrong step, one misdone jab, and everything could shift. The world is watching, not just because of who they are, but because of what they represent. Tyson symbolizes the raw force of will, A man who rose from nothing and ruled with fear and fury. Silva represents the evolution of combat. A martial artist who blended technique and creativity into something nobody had ever seen before. Now they meet at the intersection of those legacies, under the lights, gloves up, hearts pounding. But as the bell nears, questions remain unanswered. Will Tyson's brute force overpower Silva's finesse? Can Silva neutralize the storm with timing and footwork? What happens when instinct meets intelligence in the purest arena of all? Just two men. No escape, no second chances. Some say it's just an exhibition. Some say it's for the fans, for the spectacle. But to those who truly understand combat, it's more than that. This is a clash born, not of rivalry, but of legacy. It's a test neither man needed to take, but both were compelled to accept. And now, with every passing day, the anticipation grows thicker. The silence before the storm stretches longer. Because somewhere, in the quiet hours of the night, both men are visualizing that moment. The sound of the bell, the stare across the ring, the sudden deafening roar of the crowd. And in that brief, suspended breath before the first punch is thrown, one thought lingers in the air. What happens when the force of a wrecking ball finally meets the elegance of a blade? A storm was already brewing before either fighter stepped into the ring, but no one could have predicted how fast the winds would shift. Just when the anticipation for Tyson Silva seemed to settle into focused excitement, an unexpected announcement at the final press conference sent shockwaves through the entire combat sports world. Tyson, never one to mince words, stared into the cameras with a calm that felt almost unnatural and revealed that he would not be entering the bout under standard exhibition rules. Instead, both camps had quietly agreed to raise the stakes. This wouldn't be a light sparring session with oversized gloves and friendly exchanges. This would be a sanctioned professional fight. The room fell into stunned silence. Media reporters froze mid-sentence, unsure if they'd misheard. Anderson Silva, seated next to him, gave a subtle nod, confirming the twist that immediately redefined everything fans thought they knew about the event. What was once viewed as a spectacle for nostalgia suddenly transformed into something real, raw, and dangerous. Every jab, every step, every feint now carried consequence. No headgear, no soft touch. Real rounds, real rules, real damage. This wasn't just for legacy anymore. It was for pride, status, and finality. The internet exploded within minutes. Social media feeds were overrun with speculation, hot takes, and breakdowns. Former champions, coaches, analysts, all weighing in on what this shift meant. For Tyson, it was a return to his roots, a final chance to remind the world of who he once was and maybe still could be. For Silva, it meant gambling his newfound momentum in the boxing world against the most dangerous puncher the sport had ever seen. Every statistic, every prediction was suddenly thrown out the window. What mattered now was heart, instinct, and survival. Behind the scenes, tensions began to rise. Training camps shifted from intense to obsessive. Tyson's team brought in younger, faster sparring partners, fighters who could mimic Silva's rhythm and deceptive angles. They weren't just working on power anymore. They were drilling patience, breathing, control. Tyson had been known to go full steam from the opening bell. But this time, his corner whispered a different strategy, one built on precision over fury. Silva's camp, meanwhile, entered a state of controlled paranoia. They reviewed hours of Tyson's old and new footage, dissecting every movement like a puzzle with deadly consequences. Silva's coach, an old-school tactician with a love for traps and setups, began crafting a game plan that would rely on more than just footwork. They were preparing Silva not only to survive Tyson's early barrage, but to lead him into false confidence, to set the kind of traps that could unravel even the most disciplined brawler. But the twist didn't end with the rule change. Just days before the weigh-in, leaked footage emerged, grainy phone video of what appeared to be Tyson sparring a much younger fighter. In the clip, the younger opponent crumbled from a body shot and had to be helped out of the ring. The footage didn't just go viral, it ignited a firestorm. Critics argued that Tyson was going too hard, pushing too far, risking his health and others. Supporters fired back, claiming it was proof the old lion still had fangs. Tyson himself remained silent, letting the footage speak for him. But Silva, he saw something different in that video. Not fear, not recklessness, but timing. A small pause before the punch, a hesitation that told him the beast still had calculation behind the chaos. Just as the narrative seemed to stabilize around the surprise rule change, another curveball hit. Anderson Silva requested that the fight be extended from 6 rounds to 8. His reasoning? He wanted more time to implement his strategy. Some said it was a smart move, designed to tire Tyson out and drag him into deeper waters. Others saw it as dangerous arrogance. Regardless, the change was approved. And now, not only was it a professional bout, but one with enough time for the unexpected to unfold. The subplots were multiplying. Tyson's camp began dropping cryptic hints online. Old training photos, shadowy clips of private sessions, phrases like "not the Tyson you remember," and "a new monster awakens." Meanwhile, Silva's social presence became eerily quiet. No flashy promos, no cocky predictions, just short videos of him training in silence, eyes focused, as if the outside noise no longer mattered. Fans began speculating about what Silva might be hiding. Was there a secret weapon? A new technique? Or perhaps just the same calm confidence that had once paralyzed the most aggressive challengers? And then came the final rehearsal, an open workout that was anything but ordinary. Tyson arrived first, explosive as ever, showcasing a level of speed and power that left jaws dropped. But it was Silva who stole the moment. Instead of pads or heavy bags, he performed a slow, deliberate display of footwork and angles, moving in and out of range with eerie precision, barely throwing a punch. It was a message not meant for the crowd, but for Tyson. I don't need to match your power. I just need to make you miss. With each passing hour, the atmosphere grew more volatile. The sports world, which initially expected a nostalgic walk down memory lane, now braced itself for a real confrontation. One that could end brutally and suddenly. And while fans chose sides, placing bets and trading predictions, there was an undercurrent of anxiety no one could shake. These were not just two men reliving glory days. They were two forces who refused to fade quietly. And now they were barreling toward a collision that felt less like a fight and more like a reckoning. But something was still off, an unspoken tension neither camp was acknowledging. Rumors began swirling that a clause in the contract had yet to be revealed to the public, something that could potentially alter the outcome even before the opening bell. What that clause entailed, no one could say for sure. All that was known is that both fighters had agreed to it with no hesitation, a mystery hanging in the background, waiting to tip the scale when least expected. And now, with the arena lights ready to blaze, with the world holding its collective breath, a final question begins to emerge. Not who will win or how, but whether either of them truly understands what this fight might cost them. Because sometimes, when legends return to the battlefield, it isn't about glory anymore. It's about what's left when the smoke clears, and who's still standing in it. When the lights finally dimmed and the crowd settled into a restless hush, there was a strange stillness that hung in the air. Not nervous, not electric, but something heavier. This wasn't just anticipation anymore. It was the way of knowing that something irreversible was about to happen. The kind of fight that wouldn't just be remembered for its outcome, but for the choices made inside the ropes. Mike Tyson stood in his corner, shoulders broad, jaw tight, eyes scanning the ring like a man preparing for war. Anderson Silva bounced lightly on his toes, his face unreadable, carrying that same serene expression he wore before dismantling legends in the octagon. But even then, something about his calm felt different, intentional, as if the entire fight was already playing out in his mind. The bell rang with no ceremony, no grand pause, just that cold sound of steel striking steel. And in that instant, Tyson launched forward, not wild, not reckless, but surgical. His head movement sharp, his feet cutting off the ring with frightening ease. He wasn't chasing Silva. He was corralling him. Silva, for the first minute, barely threw a shot. He slipped, ducked, backed into angles, making Tyson work harder with each missed swing. It wasn't a slow start, it was bait. Then in the second round, the trap snapped shut. Silva planted his feet and countered cleanly, a straight left that landed flush on Tyson's cheek, followed by a short right hook that caught him off balance. The crowd roared as Tyson stumbled, not hurt, but clearly surprised. It wasn't the power, it was the timing. For the first time, it looked like Silva wasn't trying to survive. He was trying to win. Rounds 3 and 4 became a masterclass in contrast. Tyson pressed, punished the body, and threw combinations that made the ring shake. Silva danced in and out, landing sharp, precise counters, his face marked with bruises, but his spirit unshaken. Each round felt like a chapter in a story with no clear ending. One man fighting like time owed him something. The other proving he'd never needed youth to be dangerous. By round 5, Tyson's breathing deepened, and Silva's movement slowed just enough to signal fatigue. But Miva showed signs of giving ground. And that's when the mystery clause, whispers of which had rippled through the media all week, came into play. Midway through the 6th, the referee paused the action. The arena buzzed in confusion. The fighters were taken to their corners. Then the announcement came, not from the ring announcer, but from a representative of both camps, reading from a single-page document that had been sealed until that very moment. If the fight went past 6 rounds, a sudden death format would begin. No scorecards, no judges. One final round. Whoever controlled it wins. No split decision. No debates. It was designed for warriors, not point fighters. And both men had agreed without hesitation. That final round was unlike anything the crowd had seen. Tyson, re-energized by the clarity of what was required, came out like a man possessed, every punch thrown with intent, but not recklessness. He was reading Silva now, adjusting. Silva, bleeding slightly above the eye, stayed composed, using every inch of the ring, landing 2-piece combos before darting away. With 30 seconds left, Tyson cut the distance with a sharp left to the body and followed with an uppercut that grazed Silva's chin. It looked like the tide was turning. The crowd sensed it. But with 10 seconds left, Silva did something no one expected. He stopped moving. He stood his ground, and with the most deceptive of feints, he baited Tyson into a right hook, only to slip outside and deliver a spinning back fist that caught Tyson on the temple. The shot wasn't devastating, but it stunned him just long enough for Silva to land 2 clean shots to the jaw before the bell rang. No knockout. No man fell. Just a breathless, staggering final second that left both men leaning on the ropes, staring at each other with the kind of respect forged only through shared violence. The referee walked to the center. There was no waiting for cards, no nervous delay. The terms were clear. That last round decided it. And then the final twist came, not from the referee, not from the officials, but from Tyson himself. Before the decision could be read, he stepped forward, took the microphone, and raised Silva's hand. The gesture wasn't planned. It wasn't choreographed. It was real. Tyson, breathing heavy, voice low, said only this: "Tonight, I fought the smartest fighter I've ever met. That man earned it." Silva tried to protest, shaking his head, gesturing toward Tyson as if to return the praise. But the crowd erupted in approval, not just for the decision, but for what it symbolized. 2 men, giants of different worlds, finding the one truth that binds all fighters. Respect, forged through pain, sealed by sacrifice. The camera zoomed in on Tyson's face, bruised, swollen, but smiling. It was the kind of smile that doesn't come from victory or defeat, but from finally finding peace in the fire. Silva knelt in the corner, his head down, hands wrapped in tape, as if silently honoring the moment. And as the broadcast faded out, with both men embracing, one final surprise rippled through the commentary, an offhand mention that this might not be the last time either man steps in the ring. Rumors of another challenge, another twist. But that's a story for another night. Because tonight, 2 legends met not as relics of their past, but as warriors writing a new chapter. One where legacy wasn't defined by who won, but by how they fought when everything was on the line.